in 6 months, we basically went from 0 lines of code to an architecturally sustainable foundation that that could power all of these sites, so millions of pages.
You're listening to the Arbory Digital Experiences Podcast, where we're on a mission to simply explain the latest advancements in digital experience management. Today, we're joined by special guest Chris Millar from Adobe Systems, architect of the Edge Delivery authoring solution formerly known as Dark Alley. And now, on to today's episode.
Welcome to Arbory Digital Experiences. This is episode 27. Today's super special. This is the day after Christmas, and I'm joined today by Chris Millar, who is a good friend, and we've been working together for a little while now on the future of fun Adobe stuff, and especially as it comes to content management systems. So thank you for this post-Christmas episode, Chris.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is like almost a year in the making, right? We've been wanting this podcast for about a year, and maybe 10 months if we're being a little, but yeah.
I think so too, because I mean, I wanted our first site to go live before, like I wanted that to be successful before, bringing it out into the opens. But
I'm in the same boat. Like it was like, let's get you live, and then let's talk. And now we're talking.
That's right.
We've got a few more sites live along the way.
Just a couple. Yeah. But before we get into that, why don't you just give me a quick intro on who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name's Chris Millar, as you said. Pronounce it like you're a pirate. So my official so like you work at a big company, you have all sorts of fun reporting structures. My official reporting structure is adobe.com. So I actually roll up to adobe.com leadership. Edge Delivery and adobe.com have always had like a very symbiotic relationship. So I've been building Edge Delivery sites since 2018. Arguably, I'm probably the first Edge Delivery customer, in the sense that like I have a GitHub repo that I made in 2018 that said Helix on it, because Edge Delivery was originally called Helix. In 2020, we essentially built blog.adobe.com in early 2020 as kind of like a joint venture between the Edge Delivery team and the adobe.com team. And then I think as we started to build DA, that sort of symbiotic relationship and those lines blurred a lot. I'm probably considered the founder, if you will. I don't know what you would want to call it, of DA. I started DA as like a little skunkworks project in 2023. And it's funny because somebody actually internally was asking, who's the PM of Edge Delivery? And someone with authority, quite a bit of authority, was like, there's not really a PM. I think there is if you need an adult in the room. But like, it was like Lars and David went off and did Edge Delivery, and then Chris went off and went into this dark alley, and there's your answer. It was like a non-answer answer. So yeah, it's kind of weird. I wear a lot of hats. Sometimes I'm putting my customer hat on, and I'm like, why are you doing this, AEM? Why are you doing this to me? Or even DA. And that's kind of a lot of, some of that is born out of lessons learned from building AEM. But yeah, so I sort of like, one minute I'm a DA customer, and the next minute I'm a DA PM, the next minute I'm a DA architect. So yeah.
Well, I guess that's an interesting segue into like a superhero origin story that I wanted to get into on you, because you've got this kind of odd combination of being a customer and a producer of the product, and but like previous to all this Edge Delivery time, you were essentially just a onboard AEM customer.
Yeah.
Running a really, really, really big AEM site.
Yeah. So Adobe.com, I mean, it's no secret. We kind of talk about this every summit or every couple of summits, but Adobe.com has roughly 100 engineers, give or take, and then about 200 content creators.
Okay.
So what's really interesting though is that Adobe.com, first of all, it's a mammoth e-commerce site, but most folks don't think of it as an e-commerce site because you don't typically have like we do have a product list, but we have about like 25 products that you can buy, and it's primarily like one or two that most people buy.
Right.
So Adobe.com is interesting in that it's an e-commerce site that doesn't seem like an e-commerce site, and it's also an application portal, right? So if we're starting to blur these lines more and more, which is like if you're logged in, you want to use your apps. You don't need us to tell you like how great Photoshop is.
Right.
You've already drank that Kool-Aid. You're just wanting to get to your content. So that I think is really interesting. But yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that. But basically, yeah, I do wear a lot of hats, and yeah, prior to Edge delivery, first and foremost, a customer. Working with the product team and having feature requests and daycare tickets and all of those things. Yeah.
Right. But so I think the first time that I ran into you was at an Adobe Summit, and you were giving a talk on Dexter, and you were talking about all the different customizations that had gone into trying to make AEM really livable for your needs. Yeah. And it wasn't insignificant, the amount of work that had been put into making AEM really work for Adobe's needs internally. And I guess I wanted to
yeah. So I think that's kind of actually where I was going, is like Adobe.com is weirdly simple in that like the cache hit ratio is like really, really high. It's like 100%.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of like content actually hitting our AEM published instances. So back when we had AEM published instances, it was mostly cached. And so like, I would talk to customers like banks or something like that, and they're like, yeah, our published instances are just constantly pegged because they have to deliver like dynamic content. And it's like, oh, we don't do that at all on Adobe.com. Right. But yeah, so that I think it's an interesting story of pendulums, because when we went into Dexter, and that was like 2017-ish, marketing, and Adobe is arguably one of the most creative companies in the world. So, we should have one of the most creative websites in the world. And so we wanted to treat every page like a special snowflake, and marketing was like really felt burdened by us, because they would say, hey, we want to change a logo, or we want to move a logo a little bit. And we're like, well, your original specs didn't have that feature, so now we have to go build that feature. And they're like, whoa, my gosh, that's like going to be a month. And so we did build Dexter, which was highly flexible. To my knowledge, it was the most flexible AEM authoring experience that I'm aware of. We did use all out of the box. Like we started off with all out of the box components, core components, of course. But we built in that level of flexibility. And what's hilarious about that is like, it's a very like, be careful what you wish for type moment, because marketing was asking for high flexibility, low engineering effort, etc. So we made like the foundation, like back when we were on traditional AEM, the foundation of all of our AEM. So we have, roughly, I think on the Creative Cloud business, we have roughly 400,000 pages across 90 locales, I think, 40 languages. And then business.adobe, I think, is like in the 100,000 range. HelpX is in the 1.5 million range. And so what happened is like we had 15 foundational components, and they were highly flexible, and you could just go build whatever. And marketing originally was like, this is great. And then what happened is over time, they wanted to start making big, like far sweeping changes. And it was like, well, y'all asked for customability. That's not a word, but that's okay. We'll go with it.
They asked for it.
Yeah, you asked for it, and we gave that to you, and the burden is off of us, because you now can build whatever you want, and it actually had this, and I think this is what's interesting about software development is like you make these hunches and you make these decisions based off of like the knowledge you have at the time, and you sometimes overcorrect. And so our marketing folks did not fully appreciate that, like, well, if we're not going to be doing the work, we're not moving around those logos, they're going to be moving around those logos, they're going to be moving around those components. And that was a lot of work. And they were like, whoa, this is a lot of work. And what's interesting is, like, we moved the bottleneck. So engineering was no longer the bottleneck for most scenarios. But what happened was like the PMs who want to be creative and the designers that want to be creative, they would just go to the authors and be like, hey, I know you can change this. And it's by 4 pixels. This is off by 4 pixels on mobile. And I know you can change this. And so there's this like tediousness to it. And then we probably spent the next 2 years basically just trying to improve the authoring experience for our authors and make them, to help them be more productive. It was like, we created this mess at your request, and then and now you don't like it, and we see the pain that you're going through, like the tediousness, because you have to build everything and you're building everything as if it's a snowflake, a special snowflake. So you can imagine you can't create 400,000 pages like one off.
Right.
And so that's kind of along the time that Edge Delivery came around, and it was like this sort of lightning in a bottle moment, because right around Edge Delivery kind of coming to maturity, at least for Marlins, so this is like 2021-ish, our design team, our marketing team was sort of saying, they were starting to drink like design system Kool-Aid and starting to think like, ooh, you know what, maybe creating a consistent experience across Adobe.com would be a more worthy goal, or a more lucrative goal even, than having every single page be a bespoke snowflake. Because if we can create a consistent visitor journey, then maybe it's going to be easier for folks to check out and less confusing. If the Illustrator page looks completely different than the Photoshop page, and you're like trying to navigate between the two and check out the features, you're just getting lost and confused. So that's where we sort of started to say, okay, if the marketing team is ready for a design system, and Edge Delivery works really well with design systems, maybe it's time to actually pivot off of Dexter, off of AEM and traditional, AEM sites, component-based HTML, all that fun stuff, and move to Edge Delivery. And so we started that journey in 2022.
So I think one of the things that is interesting to me about this is that so, because you said you have like 100 engineers on Adobe.com. So yeah. Even when you've got that, and these are not chumps either. These are like, some of your guys are, I've worked with some of them. You've got some pretty high quality individuals, right? So even with really quality individuals, you're still running into, there's only a certain footprint in the product that you can reasonably affect on a day-to-day basis. Like if you say, I'm running into this problem, and here's a product that we sell that is supposed to be able to do everything. And we all know AEM does just about everything. It's made for what kind of site? All of them. So that's what it's supposed to be able to do, right? Yeah. So, but even still, even with 100 very high quality engineers, you still are running into some things that you still can't reasonably fix in the amount of time that it would take you. Like what sort of things ended up, because you said you pivoted onto Edge Delivery. What kind of things would you have run into that you're like, I'm still not getting what I need, or I might be able to more efficiently achieve my goals with a different platform?
Yeah, I mean, so that one, I famously say you need 5 different languages to get a component out the door. So you need, and it's not just the 5 languages, right? It's not just Java, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, XML, JSON, all of those things. But you also have to know the underlying frameworks that the AEM provides. So it's not just, do you know JavaScript, but it's like, do you know Granite and Coral UI? Because, you want to, some author is saying, hey, this is kind of weird. And it's like, the only way to fix this is to do it inside the editor.
Right.
So, when you have that, if you've ever looked at like how teams are constructed, if you have like true back-end engineers and true front-end engineers, you need two engineers to get something out the door.
Right.
Like 99% of the time. A front-end engineer may be able to hack something together in HTML to avoid a sling model or something like that, but it's not going to be architecturally sound. It's not going to be testable or very easily testable. So the moment you have two engineers is like kind of a sort of a point of failure or a potential point of failure, because you now have to communicate, and you probably have to communicate now, but instead of two people, it's actually three people, because you have a PM and then you have a front end developer and a back end developer. And then you could probably even argue, like in our world, like you have a designer that's in the mix, and then you have then you probably have the author as well, because your customer, if you're an AEM engineer, or even if you're any CMS engineer, it doesn't matter if you're WordPress, Drupal, or whatever, your customer is actually your author, right? You're trying to empower your creator to create something, a non-technical person.
Right.
So we just couldn't get things out the door fast enough. And even with just really reducing how much effort we had already started to put into it. So even though authoring was still like the main bottleneck, we were still like under this like 3-week release schedule cycle, because we'd say, oh, we're agile, capital A, and we would go build something, and we're like, yeah, it takes 2 weeks. We have 2-week sprints. And what would happen is like QA is like, well, you just dropped this on me after 2 weeks, and now I have to QA it. There's 5 of you. There's 1 of me. We've got a problem here. So our sprint cycles went from like 2 weeks to 3 weeks, or we would shorten dev cycles to hit that 2 week, because we wanted to keep that capital A in agile. And so it was just like the churn. It's like, okay, I need to push it up to a dev server, and then I need the QA to check it. And then can I get some UAT from an author? And okay, the back end's not done. Hey, front end, are you done? Oh, I can't do my job until, Joe is done or whatever. And so when there was just a velocity issue there. And so looking at edge delivery, we're off looking at these projects that are being spun up, and they're just like running circles. They're not battling build systems. They're in a pure sort of ESM modern JavaScript world. They're front end only. And so we had, all 100 engineers, they had to pivot. They had to pivot from, if you were a backend engineer, it was like, do you want to go more front end? Do you want to go like more data engineering front end of like, maybe you're modeling some content, and maybe you're not necessarily putting a pixel on it. So maybe you want to go that way, or like work on localization or some like content automation tooling, content orchestration. Do you want to go that way? We still need servers, or at least like we need some kind of server side services. Do you want to go that way? And so like, I think out of the 100, it was sort of like 50-50. And so our backend engineers definitely had the most of a pivot to do. And I would say 25% went to more like front end, but more from like a data wrangling, data orchestration perspective. The other half, so about 25, went to more of a pure node or continue like working on our legacy systems. And then we, in full transparency, we had, I think, two or three engineers that said, you know what, you're going into a world that I'm not necessarily a fan of, and I'm going to go find a new role somewhere where I can keep writing Java. So if we say, 100 engineers, and 2 engineers said this isn't for me, so 2% of our people decided to stay on traditional AEM and just move to a different team. But it's sometimes hard to articulate how much velocity you do get, where you're not pushing up to a fixed lane server. You're not pushing up to a dev server, a stage server, a QA server. It's like, here's my branch that's named after my favorite pet, and or more realistically, like some feature, like, oh, I'm building an accordion. Hey, PM designer, here's the branch. And,
Right.
You effectively have your own domain for that. And so like you can send that to them, and it's not like you're waiting for a 50-minute build or anything like that. And so that between like having a single sort of persona in that it's like a front end engineer,
Right.
reduces that contact time, us being able to push up code instantly, not battling build systems. All of that stuff led to us getting things out the door. Oh, and also like we'll probably touch on this a lot, but like also like we moved to, just for clarity, we moved to document-based authoring, right? We moved to SharePoint. And so again, we weren't battling a WYSIWYG system. And that was both good and bad, because some author would be like, hey, this feature in Word kind of sucks. And we're like, well, we'll take that up with Microsoft. And
Right.
Microsoft is not exactly like, Edge delivery is not exactly their number one most important customer. So it was good in that like it sort of reduced our blast radius of the problems that we had to solve, because now we did build authoring tools. Like we did build author productivity tools, but we built them in a very micro front end sort of way. And so you can't change the actual button inside Word, but you can overlay little micro front ends on top, and you can still empower your authors, but not having to do double the work. Like you get it all working on the delivery and it looks amazing. And then if you naively try to push that over to an author, the author's like, you expect me to use this? What are you talking about? And so then you have to go fix it to make the WYSIWYG happy. Oh, the WYSIWYG has some quirks with Flexbox or CSS Grid. You got to go fix all of that. And you're like doing double the work. So yeah, that's kind of like the pendulum of how we got into like really deciding that edge delivery was going to allow us to scale our business. I mean, hopefully the like that's not marketing speak. That's like
Right.
true.
Well, the thing that really to me was that so Adobe's not a small company. And so even though it's very progressive and likes to do new things and explore new technologies and so forth, it doesn't change the fact that it's a massive, massive company with lots of fiefdoms of people who are fans of various types of technology. Some of them are very legacy because look at how old Adobe is in terms of the technosphere. I mean, I was just looking at what did I look up? Oh, we were having some font issue inside of Premiere, and I was joking with my video editor Frank. I'm like, well, I mean, you would have thought that Adobe would have figured this out, seeing as though they came up with the PostScript spec. And I was like, when they come up with the PostScript spec? I'm like, wow, that was 40 years ago.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago. So there's been so it's a massive company, a really, and so it's not a tiny ship to turn around. And so you've got this huge bunch of sites, this massive footprint. It's not just www.adobe.com. It's all these other ones that you're talking about in terms of HelpX and Experience League and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that in such a short period of time that there was so much uptake on the edge delivery side of things, that so many sites said, I really dig the way this is going. When can we get on board? And went from everything on AEM, with like rare exceptions of like your blog that came from WordPress, but like that with rare exceptions, everything flipped over to the point where you got almost everything on edge delivery. Like that to me speaks kind of to it's got to, even with weird things in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
So many people would have had to live with that and see so much other value.
That's exactly it. We were not super emotional about it, which is kind of interesting because like AEM is obviously like its claim to fame is sort of its WYSIWYG authoring environment, and all of our telemetry and data, Jira tickets, everything was like everyone who's moving to document-based authoring is like wildly faster across the board, developer experience and author experience and everything. And not to say that it's flawless or anything, but we could not ignore that data. We could not ignore how much faster those folks were. And so even though we were not super in love with SharePoint and Word, it was still pretty great. And so we did decide to pivot. I think we got the decision in really early 2022 where we said we're going to put our first major site that's going to require localization, like real big kid localization. We decided to do that in 2022. And we went from 0 lines of code to the first 600 pages, and laying the foundation. Really, we had to. It's not just like, oh, edge delivery. Sometimes I'm not a big fan of like somebody that says, oh, we got this edge delivery site out in 2 weeks, and then I go, well, is it really architecturally sustainable and all those things? So we had to. In 6 months, we basically went from 0 lines of code to an architecturally sustainable foundation that could power all of these sites, so millions of pages. We got to our first 500 or 600 pages in like 6 months.
Good.
And that was when my team. So I'm a recovering engineering manager, but when my team,
I'm happy to hear you're getting better.
Yeah. We'll see. I wear hats depending on the moment, but when my team took over basically all of the edge delivery stuff. So again, we were kind of like co-ownership between the edge delivery team and Adobe.com. And so the edge delivery team was like, hey, it'd really be great if you all just like, have Chris's team take over this and take over the existing sites. So our imperative was basically keep the live sites running. So we had about 4 sites that were already running on edge delivery. So we had to keep that engine running. Meanwhile, we had to build the new engine. It's like, okay, so it's 2023. We've been building edge delivery sites since 2018. Realistically, for the last 2 years, 2022. We realistically, like modern edge delivery, what I would call is like from 2022 or 2020 and beyond. So like 2 years of knowledge of like best practices. What do we like? What do we don't like? And so build the foundation. So built the foundation, kept those existing sites running, got those existing sites ported over so we could have this common foundation. And what's really interesting, so my team was about 5 engineers. And so we did have that exact, like we had 2 historically Java engineers that moved over to more like Node, Microsoft Graph API, localization, content orchestration type things. Everybody else was sort of front-end engineering. So we built the foundation, kept those sites running, moved them over, got localization up and running, at least our first POC. More on that later. And then, so it was very apparent very fast that this was going to work. And that's why like we see a lot of sites, right? These larger organizations, maybe they're in the Fortune 500, like Adobe. And they're like, we're going to do our blog first. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I think some folks could naively be like, well, why aren't you putting your full site on it? And that's true. Like, I feel a little bit of that's kind of a bummer.
Right.
That you don't have the confidence yet. And that's fine. That's for us to do. That's for us to get you that confidence. But we did the same thing, right? We in 2020, we were like, we're not ready to put our mothership projects on this. Let's do blog. Let's do long form content, see how it goes. And it turned out to go really well. So when we did do business.adobe, which was our first big kid site on edge delivery with our sort of lessons learned foundation that we called Milo. Mm-hmm. 6 months in, we were like, this is it. Like there's no perfect system, but the velocity we're getting, is just like, we can't ignore it. So it was like, I think once we got that first site up and running, it was the floodgates were open, almost to a fault too, because now we had roughly 5 engineers that knew edge delivery really well. And then we had to train another 95.
Right.
And so what happens is like you do have that sort of mythical man month where all of a sudden like leadership is like, this is amazing. Let's all hands on deck. Let's get going. Let's get going on the future. And so now you have these 5 engineers that have to go train everyone. And so it's like, well, what about like, we got to keep the lights on for these sites, and we got to keep our authors happy. So there was a lot of cut teeth in that we had to train 95 other engineers. I think that's why I'm so obsessive about support, whether it's Slack or Discord or whatever, because we really want folks to be empowered to solve their own problems. And like, we want to also know like, where is the knowledge gaps? And where are our gaps? Whether it's documentation or whatever. So, yeah.
And with shared services, feedback loops have to be fast too. You can't wait for something to percolate through a million tech support levels to be able to get to.
Oh yeah. And similarly, like just from a customer perspective, like even though we had access to daycare or whatever, it was like we tried to avoid that at all costs, because it's like it's just like please get reproduction steps, please get this, please get that.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, like can I just have a 5-minute phone call with somebody? Like,
right.
Or so
I already know who I'm slacking internally, so can I just do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So and I think that's also born, I think the edge delivery team, we all sort of feel that way, is like, hey, just Slack us.
Right.
You're gonna get a faster response than if you try to go through normal support channels. And again, I should probably make sure I say this if I haven't already. I don't think I did, but I meant to. But like, Adobe is a very large company with a lot of different opinions. I have my own opinions, and I will share them. So don't consider my opinions the voice of Adobe by any means. My voice is for me.
I'm going to scroll like a massive EULA on the screen right now that everybody has to like accept before they go forward, to know that know what they're dealing with here.
I think I'm known to be a sort of opinionated person. So if I pause for a second, it's like I'm doing my best not to say something controversial.
In the early days of us working on this whole DA project, the number of times that I was talking to somebody else from Adobe, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm working with Chris on this thing," they'd be like, "Huh." So
yeah, I mean, that probably it probably dovetails into like how DA started, because
I wanted to get into that, because like, why? So SharePoint and Helix is a like one of these technical directions that you really can. It's like an acquired taste that once you acquire, you're like, oh my gosh, why aren't we all doing this? We're just going to do this right now.
Yeah.
Business.adobe.com being wildly successful. What drove you to do a project that you named after hiding in a dark alley working on a secret project? Like that's the big question then.
Yeah. So it was, again, I don't know why, but I really like technology history. So I have these like dates burned into my memory. But so it was 2023, and because I wear a lot of hats, there are moments where I don't get to write code.
Right.
So I was actually flying to Summit. There was a project. So we were doing our next gen localization. Our localization POC got us pretty far. We were like, it was like you could localize 20 pages for 5 languages at a time. And we were sort of hobbling along. And our next gen localization was a little bit behind schedule. And it was a little bit of a black box in that we did have that traditional like back end, front end engineering relationship. And so I was like, you know what? An edge delivery mantra is do something client side first. And then if you have to move it into a server, move it into a server. So I was like, well, let's I'm flying to Vegas for Summit. How hard can this be? Let's see what's going on. Why is this behind schedule? Let me write some code and get to the bottom myself. That was the most frustrating exercise of misery that I've ever had. I think like it could all be wrapped up. Like I would not wish that experience upon my worst enemy. trying to orchestrate content across SharePoint using Microsoft Graph APIs and Microsoft Word, which is a glorified zip file, and doing things reliably and predictably in a way that met our very high bar of how AEM worked. It was one of the most saddest moments of my life because I had never felt so defeated.
Yeah.
And so I start this, and then I think I'm talking to David and Lars at Summit and just kind of shooting ideas around and whatnot. And then a week after, I actually came up with this like really great, it was like a single file of functions of basically like what's funny about it is like, it's kind of almost, it almost was DA or AEM like, where it was like, okay, I have a function where I say from and to, or source and destination, and you provide a path and the document, and it'll go do it. And it abstracted away all the like 429s and 423s and the if somebody has it open, you need to destroy it because you can't overwrite it if somebody has it open, and all of these things. It was like this most like beautiful piece of code on top of this really horrible developer experience. And so, and at the time, I think it's probably worth mentioning, it wasn't like top of mind, but I knew that Universal Editor had at least was either an idea or there were rumblings of Universal Editor, which was like, hey, let's bring WYSIWYG editing to Edge delivery. Let's bring JCR to Edge delivery. Right. And for us, the genie was already out of the bottle, right? As far as like document-based authoring productivity. So it was like, WYSIWYG was not gonna work for us, which I'll touch on in a second, like different authoring modalities and whatnot.
Right.
Speaking of opinions. But so I just said, as sort of a palate cleanser, it's like, okay, I've been I don't know the right word, handcuffed. I've been handcuffed to my BFF SharePoint the last year. And now I'm really getting into the thick of it with these Microsoft Graph APIs. What would it look like? Would it be possible? This is an insane idea. This is literally what I said. This is an insane idea, but what if we took some of these like document-based authoring ideas and put them on something, and something that is not JCR. It is not that it can't be JCR. Maybe it eventually will be. Not JCR. Something that's like not AEM and actually not Microsoft or not Google. What would that be? What would that look like? And it was really just a palate cleanser. It was a palate cleanser to say like, okay, there's nothing worse than feeling like something is out of your control when you're an engineer.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, I cannot fix this. Like there's nothing I can do to fix this. Right. We had calls with Microsoft and everything, and they're like, you really shouldn't be using SharePoint this way.
It's not a CMS, guys.
Yeah. And the thing is like, it is, and it's actually a really great CMS. And if you have a certain, like, if you don't have those sort of like enterprisey web content management, and I very specifically want to use the word web, because we were super successful with our other projects. Our other projects that didn't need all that content orchestration, workflows, things like that. Even workflows are pretty great on SharePoint. But it's like, if you're moving around a lot of content, SharePoint just really doesn't want you to do that. It wants you to, it'll happily scoop up millions and millions of documents. And that was kind of where we were worried. We were like, oh no, is it going to support? And it's like, it's not that. It's more like, I want to move 1,000 documents and they all need to have the same images. And so SharePoint's like, we're really not designed for this. So I started research, and it was like, okay, I want this to be serverless. I want something that is serverless. I want something that acts like a tree. because that's how I work. That's why I fell in love with Apache Sling. That's why I fell in love with AEM, is that I have this content tree. I don't have SQL or any of that garbage. I don't have a relational database. And so I went through so I know Sling very well. So I spun up a Sling, and it's like, okay, how do I run Java serverless? And Java already felt like not a great fit for containers even. So, and I know what we went through with cloud service, and it's like, okay, Java is probably out. So that means I can't do Sling. Should I re-implement the Sling APIs? No. What about Mongo? Mongo's kind of Mongo can give us a tree, we know, because we have AEM backed by Mongo. Is Mongo the right way? And we lean on those APIs. And it's like, no, I can't afford that, because this was all, it's interesting. I actually didn't know what this would look like. So I actually started building this all on a personal laptop, just free and clear of Adobe IT and whatnot, and was building it during weekends and whatnot as a hobby. So ultimately, from like a pure, I have to fund this myself, because this is not a blessed project from Adobe. This is a research project. This is Chris Millar's, own crazy idea. So at first, DA only worked on a file system. It only worked locally. I actually used a file system because I didn't have anything else. It was like Node FS.
Right.
So then it was like, okay, got to move it into a server. What does this look like? And so with enough research, and this is pre-LLMs, with enough research, I realized that we could sort of kind of fake a tree with S3 prefixes. And so it was like, this proved to be like just incredibly insightful, in that I started saving into S3 and started to like really figure out like, okay, how do we show folders? How do we list, just one level down, so we're not just blowing out the whole tree? What does it look like to have an empty folder? Because for prefixes to show in S3, you have to have a file inside the folder. It's like, okay, so what does that look like? And so there was enough. So after doing the research and considering Sling and considering Mongo, even I think there was a point where I was like, would Dropbox be an answer? Because this idea, like we still believe this very strongly, which is like in edge delivery is like meet your authors where they are. Right. So I was like, ooh, maybe the idea of bringing some of your own service, your own content is a great idea. It's just like the fine print that is the problem. Like a docx file is not a very hospitable environment for the web.
Right.
At scale anyways. So ultimately decided, long story short, we're going to say flat HTML files in S3. The HTML file format will be edge delivery minus, we will persist fully qualified image URLs, which was great because then we could reference these little things that we didn't even think about at the time. We could reference other CMSs. So all of a sudden, like when we went to build AEM assets, it was like kind of laughable because it took like a week to build. It was like, do you have AEM assets integration? Yeah, we like Adobe provides
just do that together.
Front end.
Yeah. Adobe
provides a micro front end. We had like a 50 line wrapper, if that, or around it. And so what was great is like, as long as your image was published, we had it. And so it was like, it really, actually that particular example was good because it really showed that like we could bring the power of AEM to document-based authoring and edge delivery. And so that's when we just started to, or I guess I shouldn't say we at this point because like this is all research at this point.
Right.
And so started to research editors and then actually dropped the project for easily 6 months. I actually had to actually go solve that localization problem. This is one of those things where you're like, almost like you're bargaining with your parents where you're like, no, I want to go play with my friends. And it's like, no, you have to do your homework. And so it was like, my homework was y'all need to make localization scale on SharePoint. Like you got us in, and to be fair, like I had to do this because in a lot of ways I got us into this mess. I was the one that said SharePoint's going to be fine. So I put all the research down and got scalable localization out the door. And then sort of started to poke at this idea again, and actually did a Discord call. And Lars and I did a Discord call, and I had nothing to talk about, or neither of us had anything to talk about. And it was like Halloween or something. And, just serendipitously, Carl Pauls had joined the call, and I was going through like, hey, here's web components on edge delivery. And I'm just showing DA at this point.
Right.
And it was like, here I am just talking about like web components and edge delivery and how you can bridge these worlds and stuff. And I'm clearly just showing like a full blown document based editor built by Adobe, like wired up to edge delivery. So Carl was like, this is kind of interesting. This is like, none of us like SharePoint, and all of us kind of really like document-based authoring. This is kind of an idea. Would you want some help on this? I'm like, I'd love some help. So what's funny is like we all we do these hackathons, we do these workshops. They're not really hackathons. They're more like, and so we did this workshop, and Carl and I went to this workshop, and we thought we were just going to work on DA. And there were maybe like 25 other people at this workshop, and they were all kind of working on different things. There were some folks working on block collection. There were some folks working on Helix 5. I almost said Helix 6 because I've been saying Helix 6 lately. And so what's funny is like at that point, David Nuschler, who's kind of considered the owner of Edge Delivery, I was really worried about showing it to him. And then eventually enough folks were like, no, you really got to show David this. This is pretty cool. Because again, we were all sort of drinking the same Kool-Aid that he was drinking, which is like, look, go meet authors where they are. If the authors are a SharePoint shop, go meet them at SharePoint and deal. And so I was really reluctant because I'm like, this really goes against everything we tell our customers. This goes against everything we tell ourselves. This is everything. This goes against everything I have personally said. Like build your own editor. This is a fool's errand. So I was really worried that he was going to shut it down, and that's actually part of why I was building it on a personal computer, because like I had invested in this and I was super excited about this, and I'm like, what do I do if Adobe shuts this down and says don't work on this? Like, and just again in pure transparency, I was like, I'm going to build this all open source. I'm going to build this all on a personal laptop. And so if Adobe does say, no, don't pursue this, I at least want to have the option to say, well, maybe I should take this and take it somewhere else. And luckily, David was like, this is awesome. This is like, this is a great plan B, plan C. There's something to this. Gave me a big old laundry list. Like we had this quick meeting, and it's funny because I told him, I was like, I have to show you something that I don't want to show you. And he's like, this is going to be fun. And so I just set the stage. I'm like, I really don't want to, I don't want you to tell me no. I don't want you to shut this down and say this is a bad idea. Because I think I may disagree with you, and we usually tend to agree. And so he's like, you think I'm a big fan of SharePoint? And so he kind of had the same sentiment as us, which is like, we're not the biggest fans of SharePoint. It's that we're real big fans of the productivity and the low support and everything that comes with document-based authoring. So it's like, hey, go research this. This is a great research project. Keep plugging away. And BT dubs, here's 5 pet features I'd like to see. So that was kind of like a loose blessing to keep going. So then fast forward 4 months, and we're doing this hackathon. And he says, like, up at the beginning of this workshop, Chris Millar is going to be, we have these tracks. One track is block collection, one track is Helix 5, and then we have this other track which is DA. And what's funny is like Carl and I just thought we were going to work on real-time collaboration. Mm-hmm. I thought he was going to work on real-time collaboration, and I thought I was going to work on authentication. And what ended up happening is we had like 5 other engineers be like, well, we want to join your track. This looks cool. And so that's really where DA started. And that's where the we came to DA, like all these incredible folks, Marcus Hack and Andre and David Catalan and all sorts of Andreas from NetCentric. We all just like started plugging away. And so that's sort of the genesis of DA. And so I think that's really kind of where the challenges came internally. Like sort of where you do separate like opinions from facts and stuff, because, everybody's sort of proud of their own work. Right.
Oh yeah.
When you build a thing, you're going to hear a lot of Chris Millar tropes, but like usage is really the currency of engineering, because like if you're an engineer and you build something and then nobody wants to use it, what was the point? And so if all of a sudden you're working on this really great editor, this next generation editor called Universal Editor, and then you hear rumblings that like some Adobe.com Edge Delivery OG Chris Millar is deciding to not ask you about Universal Editor, but he's deciding to go build a document-based editor. You're like, the first thing is like, well, why aren't you using our stuff? Why do you feel the need to build your own thing? And, again, the genie was out of the bottle for us. Like we knew we wanted document-based authoring, and we knew that they were sort of focused on WYSIWYG authoring. And so it was like, look, not going to yuck on your yums or anything. Like, that's great. We've kind of already moved on from JCR. At least that's kind of, even with all the challenges we have on SharePoint, where we don't think we want to go back to JCR. Maybe we will. I mean, or never say never. But we were like, we want to go pursue this. And so a lot of folks were understandably hurt is probably putting words in their mouth, but they were like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, but confused, or does it somehow invalidate the engineering work that was already previously done? But like, to me, what I think is kind of fascinating about this is that, like, if you rewind it back to what you were saying earlier of you're working on a problem, it sucks to not feel like you can effectively handle something. Like you can't actually contribute something which is going to solve the problem, right? But then even back of that, like what is the whole engineering thing anyway? Like I've tried to figure this out. Like my son he's got an engineering mind, and so I've been trying to work with him on, like, I don't know what he's going to engineer in his life, but he likes fixing stuff. And so we talk a lot about like just the very basics of engineering, of like, what requirements do you have and what problems are you really trying to solve? Like what are the things that you're trying to engineer your way around? And if you look at something as big as AEM, right? What is the list of requirements that AEM solves? Like, what are the list of things that it has to be good at actually trying to fit? Like, if you were to list out everything just the whole product, the storage mechanism, and then the page editor and the customization patterns and everything that it's supposed to do, and then you go, well, this new crazy thing that you're doing, Chris, how does it solve this content management problem? Right.
Yeah.
And which must have been like something that I can just imagine the fascination of being able to work on a content management problem with a blank slate. I'm like, I don't want to solve all of those problems. What problems do I want to solve? What are the core things that I would like to solve in a CMS?
Yeah. It's really interesting because you do get, so there's this term called Gall's law, which is basically, hopefully I'm not going to botch this, but basically you cannot start building a complex system. You have to build complex systems that work started off as being simple systems.
Right.
And so almost naively, I said, what do I need to do? I need to list content. I need to be able to create content. I need to be able to delete content, and basically CRUD. And I want an API that, if you squint, kind of looks like Sling and kind of looks like Edge Delivery. And those were my sort of high level requirements. And again, very naively, it was like, I just want to save a text document. Okay, I got it. I can save a text document. Okay, now I want to save a 20 megabyte PNG. Okay, now we can do that. Now I need to list those things. And so naively, DA has always been very simple. And some of that is self-preserving, because we have one full-time engineer, that's me. And then we have, depending on the day, we have a revolving cast of part-timers. That can be anywhere from 5 to 10 people. And part-time meaning everything from like 90% time to 5% time. And so there's a self-preservation thing to build something just ridiculously, stupidly simple, which is like, I have a file, please save this in S3 at the path that I tell you to. Again, right. Which is very Sling, like resource resolution wise.
Right.
So yeah, that and so like you do have to, and this goes back, this kind of almost leads into another thing, which is like, I was talking to a VP of engineering who's a little bit of a mentor of mine, and we were talking last December, and he's like, oh, hey, how's DA going? And he's been incredibly gracious with like letting us have room to breathe and not shutting us down. And he's like, how's DA going? And I'm like, again, Adobe's big place, lots of opinions, negative commentary, people not being terribly nice, etc. And I said, I really just want to put my head down and build a great product. And he just sort of laughs at that. And he's like, you naive little boy. Like, it doesn't work like that. Now, what's really interesting is like, as we did have our detractors, as we did have our sort of like, no, use our stuff. Don't use DA. This is crazy. This is Adobe crazy talk. We did have our detractors. And again, because those folks are proud of what they built, and they should be. Mm-hmm. When we had those adversities, we did ultimately lean back to, are we proud of what we're building? And so that was sort of like the thing that helped push through those adversities and those opinions, where it was like, he was right in that it's way more than just putting your head down and building an exceptional product. But when all that like BS, for lack of a better word, all the like gray matter of getting DA out into customers' hands, when we did have those adversities, we ultimately always fell back to, are we proud of what we're building? Did we build a product? Is our product, and this is stealing another quote, which is like, we're in our infancy. Is our product stupid or is it simple? And so if it's stupid, you're on the wrong path.
Right.
And so like, we just say, no, it's simple. Can it do, because we always have that. I mean, you're going to have that. It doesn't matter the industry. Well, does it do X? Well, does it do Y? And people that try to needle you or paint you in a corner. And ultimately it was like, no, but I have a path of how we can do this in a really elegant way. We just haven't prioritized it. So I can confidently tell you, when you try to needle me, like, it doesn't do X, it's like, I can confidently tell you, like, no, it doesn't. And that's okay. We got 2,400 sites where everything's just peachy for them. We have 20 organizations, live organizations, and they're super happy. So whether it's in the Discord or whatever, or internally, it's like when somebody challenges us or throws us a little shade, which happens, maybe directly or indirectly, we just fall back to let's build a great product we're proud of. And yeah, so
well, I think that's one of the luxuries that you almost have though with the fact that Adobe already has a system which is widely considered to be the best, if not one of the world's best content management systems that does almost everything. So you can almost afford to go from something that does everything and say, we're going to build, like, it's almost, I feel like it's quasi similar to the way DHH has been working on his Linux distro. Like, you can almost afford to just say, I'm going to build a really opinionated CMS. It's very opinionated, and we've got opinions about how this is going to go and things that aren't going to be in this thing. Nope, servlets. I'm really, how do I, add this to it? That it doesn't do that, and we have an opinion as to why that is, and we think it's a really good opinion.
That's a great call out, because all of us have such a reverence for AEM and everything that AEM has represented over the years. And we can hold both of these ideas together, which is like, we have a reverence for everything that AEM has done for us and how much fun we've had with AEM. But we can also say, you know what, we'd like to do something a little bit differently. And so I think, just transparently, this is probably where I sit in the middle, which is like, in a lot of ways, I think sometimes edge delivery overcorrected with some of the things, where it's like, some of the simplicity is an overcorrection. And so I think DA brings a lot, does in a small part bring some of that back, which is like, edge delivery was like, we don't want you to have to learn Adobe's proprietary APIs. Or if we have APIs, we want those API surfaces to be extremely minimal.
Right.
And so, that was a correction in terms of like the API surface that lives inside AEM, right? Am I using the Sling resource API or the CQ page API? Well, they both have overlap. Do I use the JCR node API that has overlap with the resource API and the CQ page API? And all of a sudden, if you overcorrect there, then all of a sudden you don't even have a single way to make a document in the case of traditional edge delivery. And now DA brings back like, yes, you could make a document. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. But what's great is like, AEM is an incredible escape hatch for us. And they provide an incredible layer of air cover, because the entire AEM ecosystem, which includes edge delivery is a feature of AEM. If you are dead set on like, I want to control the markup that my server creates, I know that edge delivery is giving me semantic HTML. It's both unopinionated and opinionated, in that you're going to get a div for this and you're going to get a main tag, but it's like, well, I want a section tag for my sections. Oh, nope, you can't have that. So it's like both opinionated and not opinionated. And so if a customer comes to me and says, the number one thing that I'm most concerned about is controlling my server side markup, we've got AEM here and we've got HTL, right? And they're incredible technologies. I know, because I used them for a very long time. And so AEM is an incredible escape hatch to solve other problems. There are things, at least today, that are not fun to do in a serverless world, or at least in some ways. So a good example is like that section tag is a great example. I want to have my server render a section tag. And can you technically run a worker between your CDN and edge delivery, and so it'll convert that div into a section tag? Can you do that? Yes. Is that fun? No, it is not. Because what you're going to get is am.live is giving you divs, which is like So all of your branches, all your developer, experience, everything, div, 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 div. And then in production, you have sections like that. That's not going to be great. And so if you're dead set on like, no, I want to control the semantics of my server-side markup, then I'm going to tell you to use traditional AEM, and you're gonna have a great time.
Well, that's one of the things though that I so 5 years ago when AEM as a cloud service first came out, I basically like self-started my own like little cottage industry of pointing out all the things that AEM cloud service couldn't do. And one of the reasons for that though is I found myself when dealing with customers, I was checkmated by edge cases that it couldn't do, where you'd say, well, can we move to this thing? And I'd say, well, can it do this? This only represents, 3% of the traffic or some small percent of whatever this project is that I'm thinking of. But because it can't do this and I have to move the whole project, then that means I can't move the whole project because it can't do this thing. And if I have a list of 4 things that it can't do, then basically, even that's such a small percentage of the overall job that site is doing, it means that I can't move the site whole hog and move it to a new city. It's in a new location. When you turn that upside down, you say edge delivery accounts for 95, 96, 99% of everything, except for these 2 like weird things. We've got this funny calculator thing. We've got this contact us thing, which has to go through this wacky workflow. And then but edge delivery doesn't do my wacky workflow. Then you're like, good, well, let's solve those problems individually, as opposed to saying the entire platform is bunk because of the edge case that it can't do.
Yeah, it's both a blessing and a curse in that I say this a lot, which is like with edge delivery, you're only limited by your own creativity, which is maybe a little easy to say because it's like, okay, well, my creativity is striking out here. I just paid Adobe a bunch of money. I feel like they should be solving this problem for me. I don't want to have to go. Now I have a different perspective, right? I'm internal to Adobe and I was excited. I was like, great. I've been downstream of some AEM decisions I'm not a big fan of. And you're telling me I get to own all the decisions here? Where do I sign? Because sometimes you try to make AEM do things that it's not meant to do. And even edge delivery suffers. All tools really suffer from this. So, that is the challenge is like, okay, yes, I can technically solve this, in edge delivery, but is this, in my heart of hearts, do I think that this is a good fit? And so you constantly have to like question your own biases there on like, whether it's like I'm used to core components and you give me block collection and core components has a checkbox to show and hide dots for my carousel and block collections carousel doesn't have that. And so I guess you didn't give me that. So I'm out. I'm on core component. And it's like, if you knew the other side, you would know that it would take you 5 minutes to add dots and make that an authorable feature. But if you don't have that visibility, then maybe you might be prematurely kicking yourself back to traditional AEM land.
So on DA. So DA, I think we did the origin story and as well as the prequels on this pretty well. So fast forward to today, where today we're in this lovely world where we're 10 months downstream from my first website launch, full prod enterprise website launch on DA. And that company remains very happy with it. And we've had a couple occasions to look back and say, well, should we have gone a different way? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we didn't go a different way, because we were going to go in an entirely more complex manner, and it would not have ended very well. So now, given what it is and what it's become, how would you basically describe this product in how it exists now, and where does it fit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, just a quick call out and props to you and the entire Arbory team, because you all did launch the first customer on it. You all launched. So I think we had parts of business.adobe.com in January. So we're coming up upon a year of life sites, but you all were the first external customer and partner to launch a live site. And getting live is the real metric. Anybody can spin up a sandbox project or maybe even a friends and family blog or something, but like getting an actual customer, especially like the relationship between Adobe partners and customers, getting a customer live, and the first one at that is huge. So probably my most favorite accomplishment of 2025, even though it was your accomplishment, not ours.
This was a super team, and so yeah, it was all of us.
It's interesting because so DA started out, we had to frame DA in a way. So we always frame DA as an alternative to SharePoint for edge delivery, and as your product grows and matures, you have to change that narrative, because like if all of a sudden you're now talking to customers that have never used edge delivery with SharePoint, they have no reference point of what you're talking about, like why it could be better or anything like that. So the first year of like internal sales and external sales, it was really about like taking existing edge delivery customers and educating them of like why DA would be a better fit for them, or how DA could solve some of their pain points that they had on SharePoint or Google Drive. And now you fast forward, and DA is just this freestanding thing. And it's sort of like the default. It literally is the default in that if you go to aem.live/tutorial, it's going to tell you to build a DA site. And so DA is edge delivery author. It's your authoring surface for edge delivery. It's if you're trying to get a site live or a project live, you need to deliver it, and that's edge delivery. And then you can choose other content repositories or editing services to wire up to edge delivery. And DA is the default now. So it's just it's kind of weird to just say like, what is DA? DA is an authoring environment for edge delivery. It is the authoring environment. It's the sort of I would say premier, but like again, if you're looking to bring over servlets and things, and you have developers that are maybe more comfortable in JCR, AEM is really great for that. So yeah, which is funny because like we constantly talk about branding and whatnot, and like we don't get to choose. I hope we're not going to get this like next gen composability thing. I hope we don't have that moment. But in fact, I think if you look at our GitHub repo now, it's just called Edge Delivery Author.
Okay.
Because when Cedric made the decision to and sort of like I don't know if I would say this is a decision, but he certainly gave us the idea, and he certainly championed the idea of like, well, UE can work on top of anything. And yeah, it sort of heavily flavors JCR. Those aren't his words; those are mine. Seeing what I've seen. But you can wire it up to any CMS. And so if we can technically wire it up to any CMS, the commerce folks at the time, it was January of this year, the commerce folks are like, well, we really want UE. And the AEM team is like, well, the cloud manager and from a licensing perspective, and the headroom from a licensing perspective, we don't really want to give them a JCR thing. Maybe we should see what UE on top of DA looks like. And so that sort of like direction happened in January. And so we were off to the races. Like January, we had a POC. I think Marcus had a POC in like less than a week.
Right.
And so that at that moment, we went from Dark Alley to DA, which was document authoring. And so at that point, we actually dropped. It used to say, I think first it said Dark Alley in the top, like where the logo is, the little logo lockup. It said Dark Alley, Project Dark Alley, or something like that. And customers, I think you all were the ones that we're showing. What was it? It was like, we're showing some other companies this, and they see the word Dark Alley and it doesn't inspire confidence. So we changed it, right?
Yep.
So then it was lunch. So DA is just a edge delivery project itself. So just at lunch, David and I were like, delete on document authoring, and called it author, and just in service of, we're well beyond document-based authoring now, because you can throw UE on top of it.
That's right.
So yeah, that's I'm sort of like hoping to plant seeds that DA just ultimately is called Edge Delivery Author. What are you doing? I'm authoring content for Edge Delivery.
That's right.
We'll see. We'll see if the branding gods and goddesses are kind to us. We'll see.
Well, the target, the destination is what matters in this case, and where you're getting the content from shouldn't. And I mean, that's what all this craziness that I've got on my screen here is a AEM Forms Linux box that I'm myths. This is one of our next fun things to talk about. But yeah, it's still, the destination is still Edge Delivery.
Yeah, so it's been really fun. I think getting DA has gotten way more support from folks, and some of those adversities that I was talking about before have largely gone by the wayside. It's incredible that, I think John Madden said, success is a really great deodorant, and like, when to put that in like engineering terms, it's like shipping is a great settler of arguments. And so, right, you all were the first. So like, if you think about it, January 1, we had two external customers that were fully, maybe 2 to 5 customers that were fully committed to building a site, or a site or many sites. So about 5 different orgs. And then Lars kind of pontificated, we want to have, I don't remember if we didn't differentiate at this point, but I think he said, we want to have 50 live sites on DA by the end of the year. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're cuckoo pants. We don't even have a single site live. When he said that, he was like,
right.
And again, for me, shipping is what matters.
Right.
So, now, we have roughly 20 organizations live. I think we just hit that mark last week. And then we have about 22 or 2,400 sites, actual sites live. It's a little bit of a cheat because we have a school system that is roughly 2,000 of those, I think. So it's one organization with over 1,000 different sites, because they have a site for every school. But it's also the complexity in there is like, should not be dismissed, because they would launch like 200 sites a day. It was pretty fun to watch. They're just like, we shipped another 200 sites today. And so if you think about the coordination of like the school teachers, the principals that are like authoring the content in DA, just like it, they're like my poster child of implementations in a lot of ways, because they're non-technical users. They kind of drank the same Kool-Aid that we did, because they did come from a component-based world, and they only had a few people that could author in a component-based world. And then now every single teacher, every single principal, totally easy. They got it. They self-service everything. It's really great. So they're kind of our poster child. So yeah, it's great. And
something like that should be a poster child, though. Like, I recently I went on somebody else's podcast and I said, oh yeah, I do platforms for content management systems. And they were like, oh, but so what is that? Is that is that like, what is that content? Is that like content creators like TikTok or something? And I actually had to explain what a CMS is for the first time. And when you bring it down to brass tacks, a CMS is that system that enables a non-technical user to be able to create content and reliably get it out onto the internet. So a school principal or an assistant principal who's supposed to be updating today's menu for some school that is just so many joints removed from where you sit as a technical architect for a platform. You know what I mean? Like that is the goal.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I mean, just to also to further that point, you know, you all needed a lot of help from us because we were building a product while you were trying to use the product, and there were a lot of paper cuts. The foundations were there, but it was like, oh, there's this paper cut, there's that paper cut. And so one of the highest compliments we can get is when we find out that somebody went live like weeks ago and we didn't know about it. Because it means they didn't need us. It means that the product worked the way it should. And so, I mean, gosh, you and I, like last year, like 2024, you and I were on calls like every week of like, hey, this is weird. Like, what are you going to do about this? You know, or, you know, you say it does this, but it does something slightly different. And what about like, and so like you and I were on calls all the time trying to get that first customer live, and very much rising tide lifts all boats. Right. So, you know, when you all were giving us feedback and your customer was giving us feedback, I'm like, oh yeah, Adobe.com is going to come upon this pretty soon. And boy, am I glad you're calling this out. So I have a reason to prioritize this and elevate it and get it fixed. So yeah, that's one of the things is, you know, if we can get folks live without a lot of hand holding, it means that everything is sort of working. And then there's times, you know, there's times where had this a couple of times where customers went live with something and then we hear rumblings of like dissatisfaction, and they might be on something else. They might be on SharePoint. They might be on Crosswalk, something like that. So we'll hear rumblings and maybe even I'm trying to think if we had complaints post DA. I think we had complaints in a post DA sense of like, y'all told us to use SharePoint, and I felt this too internally with Adobe, Adobe.com, but like, okay, Adobe, y'all told us to use SharePoint. When we started complaining that SharePoint was not working, you told us to use DA. Now we're trying to implement DA, and like it's clearly in development. Like, what should we do here? Like, SharePoint doesn't work real great. DA works great, but we have these paper cuts. Like, what should we do? And so we really did have to come in and be like get really sort of rigorous about like, what are we going to fix? What are we not going to fix? What are we going to prioritize? All those things. And then, you know, luckily in that customer's particular case, you know, they're quite happy now. And they're also kind of in the same boat as your original customer, which is like, it's funny because like some of the decision makers are sort of UE curious, universal editor curious, which I get. It's like, you know, you see a shiny thing and whatnot. And the engineers are like, well, if we do this, if you want to use UE, we can do that. We just have to add component definitions, component models, you know, make sure the WYSIWYG is happy. So any little tweaks like we did in Page Editor. So we had engineers like being like, almost like doing their own pushback of saying like, hey, this will slow our velocity down, which just to be clear, like sometimes you want that, you know? And so like that's another really important take. And this is my opinion. So again, Adobe's a big place, but our three core pillars of edge delivery are it's faster to create content for, it's faster to develop for, and you get better site speed. If you're a customer and you choose to use Universal Editor or any WYSIWYG environment, I actually saw a customer that built their own WYSIWYG environment, which was like, whoa, you are really signing up for a lot of work because I've been there. But when you sign up for a WYSIWYG, you are signing up for more work. You are signing up, like your developer velocity does go down. You have more work to do, like component models, component definitions, those things. You do have more work to do. You do now. You as a company, you might say that investment is worth it to me. Yes, it's no longer the fastest to develop for, but I want my authors on Rails. I want them to have a drop down that turns red if they don't select something. So you may want those things. We don't want to oversell you something. So if you use Universal Editor, there's a lot more clicking you have to do because we've created a UI that and all WYSIWYG is like this. It's not specific to UE, but
right.
Like you're asking for more UI, right? You're asking for more modals to pop up and switching contexts of like, oh, now I'm editing this and now I want to move and now I want to drag. You're signing up for that and that's fine. But it will, you as a customer have to make those decisions.
Yep. One of the things too that so because it's not that those requirements, those I need it to turn red or I need that level of Rails. It's not that those customers don't exist. I mean, there's plenty of AEM customers that are out there that I literally cannot have anybody editing something that's outside of these bounds, because if they do, it's a legal risk for us, and the legal risk is significant. So, and I needed to go through this workflow before it ends up on the internet and so forth.
Yep.
Exactly. Those do exist, but yeah. Now, so in terms of where you ended up landing with DA in terms of a feature set, because right now you've got, I mean, yes, you started out with a super basic like set of requirements of like, I need a tree, I need to be able to edit stuff, it should be fast when I save stuff, I need a flexible way of presenting images, I do need localization. So you've got a couple of these things, but then you started out with a super basic set of features, but then you end up needing to, this is again, it's kind of like this whole like, does it re-implement everything that AEM ever was and is, and how much of that kind of opinionated set of requirements do you then bring into this? Because when all this started out, there wasn't really a framework for like author customization, because there's like in any major org, there sometimes they have more authoring releases than they do publication side code releases in terms of really customizing the author experience. It's taxonomy and all these other, I need people to be able to add these properties or need them to have this thing. So there were things that were added. Do you want to speak to that at all in terms of like what decisions did you make on what level of author customization options did you want to give to folks?
Yeah, that's a good one. This is a really good one. I wasn't expecting this. Because I think there's two angles here. So the first one is you all needed a date picker. And it was like, we have no idea, like we have no path to give you a date picker.
Right.
And we had, speaking for myself, I had a little bit of PTSD with the amount of abstractions to add simple stuff to the authoring UI of traditional AEM, especially like admin screens. I actually wrote a blog. One of my very first blog posts was like how to work with like how to build an admin screen in AEM, and it's like all sorts of like overlays and all sorts of like you're like reverse engineering the JCR in CRXDE, knowing what you know about slaying and extending and resource super types and all sorts of things like that. So it was like, okay, got a customer. They need to be able to They need to be able to have a date picker. They need to be able to own it. We kind of had, it's funny because like we kind of, between Rafi and me, I think we originally started off with this sidekick idea of like, what if we could have an iframe living on top of Word? And then you can and then started to look at like clipboard APIs and good things like that. So that was kind of the sort of alpha of what we wanted to do with DA. And so I knew that I wanted something like that, but I wanted it to be a little more predictable and a little bit more structured and I don't know, predictable is probably the right word. And so it was like, okay, let's take the iframe concept from edge delivery, but let's make it a little more structured. So it's like, okay, you're going to add these two properties and then it's going to populate into the library. And so your library has all sorts of fun stuff. It's got your blocks, it's got your templates, it's got icons, it's got placeholder values, it's got fragments, it's got plugins. So it's a library of all these different things. Just like you can check out a DVD from your library or you can check out a book. So doing that, and so what was really nice about this is the front end community has been having these challenges of like, especially when you're a platform provider, the front end community, you don't want to be executing customer code inside your own code base. Just hard stop. So we were, and to be fair, like if you're on AEM, you're running your code literally alongside. Now you've hopefully deployed it and everything. So we basically standardized on micro front ends for all of that, for all of the extensibility and what made sense from an extensibility perspective. We didn't want to have like 1,000 different places. And then all of a sudden you're back to AEM with like analysis paralysis of like, where do I do this? How do I do this? It's like, nope, you got one spot. And then, yeah, the other piece was like, I didn't want folks to have to go through what I went through as far as like learning new technologies. If you want to use React, go for it. If you want to use Angular, go for it. So not only did iframing your own site, and so you make a little HTML page in your GitHub repo for your edge delivery project, and then you bring whatever frameworks you want. So if you want a build system or anything like that, you can go for it. And then we will one up Word in that we will give you a couple of functions that will allow you to push content into the editor. So you can, I think right now we have like 4 functions, which is like you can get the current selection, you can insert text, you can insert HTML, and then I think there's one more. I don't remember what it is. And so again, it's self-serving, but it's also nice in that we have a very small API surface, so you don't have 1,000 different ways to do something. But also you don't have to, which means you don't have to learn a ton of stuff like in 5 minutes. I think the lab is actually the lab we did at Adobe Developers Live is like my canonical happy place, I guess, for like DA extensibility, because I was going to try and not talk about AI because I feel like folks could use a break, but I will say this. The lab was great from an extensibility perspective because it was like, here's how you build a plugin, have your AI do the lab was the AI is going to read your page and it's going to give you back 5 to 10 keywords for tags for your page, and then we'll stuff it into the page. And so you can do that in 15 minutes. I spent weeks on AEM extensibility, like just reverse engineering, like all the JCR nodes and everything of like how to get a button, how to get it deployed, what vault filters to run that aren't going to like wreak havoc and all of that. And like just all of that was not fun. So I didn't want folks to have to go through that. But and it's important for folks to know though, is like, if you have a need, let us know. We have some other places where we kind of want to do some extensibility things in a safe way. That's another thing, is like sometimes user experiences are less ideal. When sometimes user experiences are less ideal in for the sake of security. So it's like, ooh, you build this thing and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Why didn't anyone else ever think of this? And then all of a sudden security comes down and goes, boom, here's why no one has ever done this. And you're like, ooh, we have to fix this. But yeah, I think it's been a success. I think I've seen some really incredible things that folks have built on top of DA, and that lab, you have the AI generate your tags, and pause. You have your AI generate tags, and then you as a human, that's obviously non-deterministic, and LLM's just going to go wild. And then you as a human, you should bring in the governance piece, which is like, okay, now let me get a holistic view of all my content, and let's see, like, did the LLM do an underscore here and then a dash over and a hyphen over here? You could spend weeks trying to get the LLM to like be consistent. And we've all done that, the whole like prompt and pray, right? It's like, please just, or you can say, okay, LLM's not going to be great for this governance perspective. So, we're going to make an app, and DA gives you the affordances to make a full blown app, almost nearly identical to the DA apps themselves. And I will bring in the governance. So that's something that's been really exciting and really fun to see.
Well, the fact that it is simple and predictable, and I also didn't want to bring too much AI into this, because I feel like there's a certain subset of the population that like tunes out when you start mentioning it. But the fact that because of how simple that surface is that you're working on, you end up kind of turning into with DA and with Edge Delivery as a platform, you kind of end up turning into, it's a little bit Green Lantern-esque, where you're mostly limited by, like, can you imagine it clearly? Can you think about it clearly? But if you can imagine it, then you can get it put together pretty fast. And some of that stuff is complicated and well thought out also. Like our main engineer for the customer we brought live. I mean, she's got stuff that she's put together for AEM Rockstar as a result of this. If you rewind to any of my enterprise customers in say 2017, I remember clearly a financial services customer that we spent the entire year doing a 6.2 to 6.3 upgrade on AEM. There was not a ton of like great features that we implemented. There wasn't a lot of like real author enablement, developer enablement, fun, new, really nice stuff. It was all guts and a lot of work, and to have talented engineers kind of drowned in that sort of non-creative work for not that much output. To see what one engineer can do right now is really, it's special, I think.
Yeah, and you can get into this trap. I certainly did when we built Dexter, which is like, if you are too high on your own needs, or you let your own biases, sometimes you can lose sight of things. And so, when we built Dexter, I'd say like I've fallen on both sides of this. When we built Dexter, it was like, well, what authoring, if I wanted, omnipotent powers as an author, what would it look like? And I built that. And then we had these, some of our technical authors loved it. And then some of our less technical authors are like, just needed support every single day. And even as obsessive as we were about the authoring experience. And so we let our own biases of like, what would we want? We maybe over corrected on what would we want. And then where that worked out really well was when we were working on the extensibility. Like David Boschart, he was like, I want to build this date picker for them. And I said, okay, I love your energy. This is great. I have kind of a loose vision of how I want a plugin system to work. So I need you to be my customer and you give me feedback. And so like, I'm going to give you this. And then it turned out really great. And so it was like, okay, I don't want this like convoluted mess. I just want to be able to I want to be able to work locally with my plugin. So I refresh and it just works. And I don't have to do a deployment just to see my thing working. And how do I do that in a secure way? And like all those things. So that's just to say that like nuance and context is everything, maybe, which is maybe cheap, but sometimes you have to like, you really can't go one way or another where it's like, if you're too high on your own sort of biases, and you have to be honest with yourself of saying like, what are other folks going to want too? And so I've seen it go both ways, but I think we did a pretty good job on the extensibility. And like when we had the school, this is also a really fun one. Like when we had the school system, they're like, we need to make a lot of schools really fast. And we need non-technical people to be able to make a school. And so Hannes, who's also on the DA team, Hannes and I built this little like site creator. And so we put on our customer hat and we're like, all right, we're going to build a site creator and we're going to use all the DA APIs and the edge delivery APIs and we're going to be our own customer here. And so it was cool. You filled out the name, you filled out the principal's name and whatnot, and you clicked a button and 50 seconds later you had a site, an entire site. And so we were our own customer. And what's nice about that is it validates like, ooh, we had a lot of fun and we did this really fast. So I guess we're on to something. It wasn't like, oh, this works for me, but not for you. No, it's like, no, it works for everybody. It seems like it's working out well for everyone.
I think that's an underestimated side benefit of the fact that, because I think some folks miss the fact that so DA is an edge delivery project. And one of the core things that I think, again, is underappreciated, but is huge on edge delivery projects is this idea that there's no fixed environments. And as a result of there being no fixed environments, you also have this ideal that you're always working toward of your local development experience develops with the full load of production content. Yeah. So there's basically there's a super limited set of things that you can't test when you're doing local development, and an even smaller list of things that you can't test when you've published to a branch for review. And so when you have that same exact a philosophy toward your authoring experience, you have the same thing, because a local author, like take AEM, a local author, you have no access to production content. You have no, unless you packaged up, all, 10 terabytes of your production content and somehow have them on your laptop, which is not going to happen. So there's all these things that you can't test, and you won't test until you move them up. And you've got the same thing now, basically, where your CMS, the actual CMS itself, is edge delivery. Therefore, you've got a local development experience that's just as good as it is on edge delivery for published sites.
It's funny you say that, because like we kind of like, and again, this is sort of in the interest of security, but like we actually made local development a little bit harder to solve some security challenges, because you can still do this right now, but like you would do AEM up, and if you didn't put, like, you have a throwaway sandbox or whatever, if you didn't put auth on your project, you could just work. So if you have some throwaway content, like, go nuts. So local development was for building DA itself was as easy as AEM up, and you worked against your production content, and so like if it's really important production content, you have it locked down.
Right.
But what was nice is like, if you had that sort of sandbox app, if you had that sort of sandbox project, you could work on your stuff. And then when you would push up a branch to have Hannes or Triple Chris check something, we did just send them. So it was like, how we build DA is exactly how we build edge delivery. Only recently, which this is a whole dovetail into like product-led growth and PLG and all that. But recently, a very well-intentioned sort of white hat hacker, if you will, started to quote unquote vandalize these open sandboxes. And we always wanted, like, from a product-led growth, and the idea is like, don't go put all your eggs in this product until people actually want to use it. And so when we were in this sort of PLG mindset, this sort of product-led growth mindset, we were like, if you want to go like kick the tires on a sandbox project, you shouldn't have to sign up. Like, signing up, it's the cousin to, if you don't see a price, you can't afford it.
Right.
So we said, like, hey, everybody, just go make your content. When you care about your content, go set up authorization. Here's the docs. Some developers started to realize, like, hey, there's a bunch of like open projects kicking around. And again, all sandbox throwaway stuff, but it's not a good look, right? So we had to basically, all of a sudden, we're no longer in PLG, right? We've got plenty of customers. DA is going to survive. Like, this is all great. And it's like, okay, we need to start locking things down. So yes, while DA is very much first and foremost a edge delivery project, go run AEM up. Every once in a while you have to do something for security reasons, or just like even just not even security necessarily, but like, what's the right thing to do?
Right.
And so you can still do AEM up. You just have to log into Stage IMS. So sorry, folks that want to go poke around DA, like, you're going to have to log into Stage IMS, and that comes with some like, how does Stage IMS work and all that. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a decent segue to another question I wanted to get into, which is so all of this is new to a lot of folks. And so if you've been running your current CMS and you just really haven't had any reason to dive into the edge delivery world, we've already talked through like 3 different evolutions of edge delivery over the last like 3 years, right? But if you've been running on-prem gear and you just had no real reason to check into this, it'd almost be like if somebody hasn't heard about LLMs over the last 2 years and suddenly you realize that there's a new world. So if you were trying to explain to somebody who is used to CMS requirements as they existed in 2020 or whatever, how would you, what are ways that you think that people need to just think differently about CMSs? Because there's all these, and I wanted to get into this like kind of like Mythbusters kind of section of all this, of like, like, but it doesn't do this, right? Like, but is that even a requirement? Like, is that even a thing? And so what different ways have you found that people need to start thinking differently about the way they're approaching content management?
Yeah. The thing that I see that I'm seeing, especially from an AEM world, is developers. So we have these 3 pillars, right? Faster develop, faster site speed, and faster authoring time. So when you can't appreciate that until you're on the other side. And so so not only is it like, it's off in the distance somewhere, and like, I can tell you that you're faster, but like, it's just going to sound like Adobe's just usual old talking points. Or maybe some partner gets a project out the door and had a really fun time and came under budget or whatever. And so it's like, oh yeah, you're also just drinking the Adobe Kool-Aid. Of course, and it's kind of like, this is going to be a really weird tangent, but it's kind of important. So, I don't drink alcohol. I used to, and then I stopped. And, when I decided, it was like, hey, I like mental health and all of this. And it was like, oh, I want to live a life without drinking. I would see people on the other side and they're having all sorts of fun. And I'm like, I don't understand how I can go to a party and not have a beer. Like, it just, like, my brain could not wrap my head around it. And so, but they're all having fun, and I can't, I don't know how to get over there. And so edge delivery is kind of the same way, which is like, they all look like they're having fun. I'm seeing smiles. I'm seeing like, I'm seeing problems getting solved, and I'm seeing go lives, and I'm not, so I don't know how to get over there. And the thing that I always like, I think there's nothing wrong with starting with a small project. There's nothing wrong starting with a small subset of your sites. Let edge delivery prove itself to you. Make sure you're set up for success. The big one that I see is that we get AEM engineers that kind of like, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to go spin up my dev server and my QA server. And how do I spin up a QA server? And how do I spin up a dev server? And I'm going to make it's branches. Okay, I'm going to make a branch called stage, and I'm going to make a branch called QA. And it's like, you're destroying the value proposition of DA here. If all of a sudden you have to take your code from your local and then get it onto dev, and you already have this branch here, which you could send to get any sort of sign-offs that you need, but you've decided that no, it's got to go into the dev branch. You're signing yourself up for overhead. You're signing yourself. Another good example is like, I saw folks, they start off with a brand new project and they're like, we're going to go live in 6 months. And they make their dev environment. And I'm like, so you're not live. You're not planning on being live for 6 months. I get like wanting to have backups of copies or whatever, but like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to do all this development work. You're going to get into like some QA or stage server-ish thing. It's not a server, right? I mean, it's a serverless server tied to a branch name.
Right.
You're going to get all this ready to go. And then you're going to be like, we need to go live. And you're going to have to do all of that QA and UAT all over again because you decided to put yourself into your own box.
Right.
And so the challenge that we have is like, how do we convince you that this side is easier? If you're like, no, I need to have a QA server, even though there's nothing that can go wrong on a non-production site. I need to have a QA server and a dev server and all this stuff. And it's like, just make your live production site, because once you validate that this page is great, you're done. Problem solved. You just move on. If you do that in a QA or stage context, that page is great. Now you gotta move it to your quote unquote prod instance, which is just a folder in DA and a branch in GitHub and a config bus entry. All of a sudden you're signing up for more work. And so all of a sudden you go into this and you're like, I know what I'm doing. Edge delivery is easy. I hear it's easy. Why is it not that much better? And it's like, well, I got bad news for you. You just brought along a lot of your sort of traditional AEM biases. And so that is like kind of a two-pronged issue, is like, how do we convince folks that this isn't just for baby sites? We need to give you examples. We need to prove to you. Because if all of our marketing is like, look at XYZ blog, look at, it's like that ain't gonna fly. That ain't gonna do. In fact, it's been a huge point of work on our side, and even going into 2026. So that's the thing, is like, so edge delivery can power Adobe.com, and I've seen edge delivery and Adobe.com is still arguably one of the most, especially for its size, pound for pound, it's one of the most creative websites in the world. If you go to the Firefly product page, it's an incredible page built with document-based authoring, highly interactive, all this stuff. And so it's like, you really have to, if you're like, edge delivery can't do X, I think you really need to look at your own biases. Because I've seen every single type of site. I heard, it was funny. I was on a call showing DA, and somebody's like, you can't do single page applications with edge delivery services. And I'm like, what is DA? Is DA not a single page application? Because in many ways it is. And so it was funny. It was very, it was like, okay, sure. And that's another thing is like, if you're not convinced, I'm also a little past the point of like trying to convince folks. Spent a good year, where if you say something, it's like what I tell my kid, if she says something can't be done, well, her mind is already made up.
Oh yeah.
And so like, if you say you can't, you can't.
You're right.
I'm not here, if you're not sort of interested in having a good conversation about this. I think a mutual friend of ours had a really good take. Brett from RxDX.
DXRI. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's I think he's kind of on record of being, I'm going to put words in his mouth a little bit, Brett, I'm sorry, but a little bit of a edge delivery skeptic. And we had some really great conversations, and I was like, let me just show you, like, you've seen a lot of stuff from the peripheral. Let me show you a bunch of things in DA. And he's like, he seemed to turn a little bit. And I think his insight was really good, which is like, look, at the end of the day, these are just trade-offs. AEM is going to be better at one thing, and edge delivery is going to be better at one thing. And so like for him, he was like, it's just a matter of trade-offs. Like, would I, like, if I have this paper cut on AEM and I don't have it on edge delivery, well, is my project better off with edge delivery and its sort of flavors of paper cuts, versus like the paper cuts of AEM? And I think your customer is a good example of that, where I think they have an internal engineering team of like 1 or 2 engineers. And so like the complexity of AEM is the paper cut.
Yes.
The deployment and the Java, HTML, XML, like all of that, like one engineer can't necessarily support that. And so that was the paper cut for them. And so they said, oh, edge delivery is actually a better fit because we can do everything we need to do. Now, again, paper cut on the edge delivery side, I need to be able to control server-side markup. That is a hard requirement. There's nothing you can tell me that will ever change my mind. I need server-side markup. And edge delivery doesn't really support Next.js very well. And AEM, I can do whatever I want, so I'm going to use AEM. And totally fine. But I will say, and this is a key area, like 2025, if I was to roll up like my number one goal in 2025 was make sure DA survives. That was the number one goal because it was still in the cards. It was early access technology. Again, Jan 1, didn't have a single live customer. So my number one goal was make sure DA survives. And that was like, we did things just for pure sales reasons that we would not have maybe done. We did that so we could close a deal or something. There was some pet feature or whatever. And so like, we're good now. Like DA is going to survive.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. We're well into that now.
Well, yeah. Like DA is going to survive. Way past the point of early access technology. And so my number one goal for 2026 is to remove any reasonable reason why someone would not choose edge delivery. That's my number one goal, is like remove any sort of reasonable reason why someone would not choose edge delivery. And so we have 2 very big tentpole features we're researching right now. going into 2026. And so, because there are still reasonable reasons. What's funny is like, one of those, I won't beat around the bush. Like one of those is structured content. We're looking at structured content.
Okay.
And, I think it's called content fragments in the AEM world. And this is another one of those, like, check your biases at the door. I don't necessarily have any use for structured content. If I do, I don't know about it, or it's like 0.1% of,
or you've already solved it in a different way.
It a different way. Yep. And accepted the trade-offs or whatever.
Right.
Touch on that actually. So structured content. And so it's like, we have customers that are like, hey, we want to use structured content. And just from like, again, we do things for sales, or at least to prove a point. Like if somebody comes in and says, well, can you do X? Or I hear edge delivery cannot do X. And that's true. And so even if it's just a research project where I can pull it up, even if we're not shipping it or it's an early access thing, it's like, here's our path to do this. And here's all the research we've done around it.
We could make this prod ready. This isn't necessarily prod ready, but you're not checkmated.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of is sort of how I solve sort of the edge delivery skeptics, if you will.
Well, then let me. I'm going to skip right into a couple of my other MythBusters ones, because I hear this all the time when I'm trying to convince the unconvinced. So one of the other ones, and this is going to get right into like this is almost like somebody cussing at you, but this is folks saying that edge delivery is just a hack for hacking Google Lighthouse scores. And it's built around the whole eager, delayed phases and so forth are all just a hack for an arbitrary target. It's a little mean spirited when one hears that. But what would be your response to something like that?
So. I think it's important to know, and this is maybe a dirty secret or a not so dirty and not so secret comment. Lighthouse does not matter.
Yep.
Lighthouse is developer bragging rights. It is and maybe even executive bragging rights. The thing that matters is core web vitals. So you can pass Lighthouse and fail core web vitals. You can pass core web vitals and fail Lighthouse. Lighthouse does not matter in any sort of material way. Lighthouse is useful to give you as a developer metrics on synthetic metrics to help you get to a good core web vital score, but ultimately a 100 Lighthouse score means absolutely nothing aside from bragging rights.
Mm-hmm.
And it also tells you that somebody framed this really well on Lighthouse, which is or on LinkedIn, which is if you have a 100 Lighthouse score, it means that Lighthouse can no longer help you.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't have more work to do. It's just that you've exhausted what Lighthouse can do for you. You can gain. Now, I think there's two parts to this. So you can. There's also a guy on LinkedIn that has this like the Homer Simpson meme of like he's looking all trim and then he's got like all of his extra parts like rubber banded behind him, and somebody talked about like deferring JavaScript and whatnot to that. You can totally do that. And edge delivery, what I would say is the way edge delivery loads content is, and actually the content is already there, right? Unless you pull in a fragment or something, but the content's already there. It's already in the HTML for the majority of the content. So edge delivery is basically accepting the realities in which we work, and it's giving you proven patterns that we're not doing any, like there's no, I've seen plenty of questionable, and I've even tried doing some of them. Like you can do questionable Lighthouse hacks. And everything that is in edge delivery and is in boilerplate and AuthorKit and all of those, it's basically saying like, we're only going to give you what you need when you need it.
Right.
And to me, that's not hacky. That's like, just like, if you're on a 4G connection in the middle of nowhere, a low end 4G connection in the middle of nowhere, you don't need to load the footer. You don't need to load the header. Those are not the most important parts. You did a Google search, you saw an answer, and or you saw something in the search results page. You clicked on it, and you clicked on it not for the header content, but for the actual content of the page. And so all we're doing is basically agreeing with Google and agreeing with the user that this other stuff is less important. And so, and we architected all of boilerplate in AEM.js to do exactly that. And so it's like, we will, like, is it a hack to say, hey, if I'm not using a block, don't load its JavaScript? That's not a hack. That's smart.
That's intentional. Yeah.
So it's important to know, but yeah. So I wouldn't call those hacks. And if you break down the abstractions enough of anything, literally anything, whether it's an organic bean or code or whatever, but like if you break down the abstractions enough, you can say, well, that's just a hack. Like you're writing in C++, but the machine actually wants zeros and ones. You're just hacking your way to zeros and ones. Like, okay.
That's true. I don't speak binary.
Yeah. And so it's like, is it less of an application to say like, I'm using this abstraction. So yeah, but again, Lighthouse doesn't matter. Lighthouse will constantly give you misleading things. You can totally gamify it. All of the AEM projects that you see, like at least coming from Adobe, you're not going to see any gamification. You're not going to see any shady, like if it has this Google, user agent, do X, otherwise do Y. Like you're not going to see any of that. It's very foundational. Just load JavaScript when you need it, show content when you need it. Don't prioritize the wrong things. This to me, this is just common sense stuff.
Well, on any site that it has a business purpose, the gamifications don't tend to survive, because if they don't support the business, then they were there for exactly one iteration until you needed a feature, and then you're gonna get practical again.
Yeah, and that's where I get back to like architecturally sustainable practices. It's kind of like the LLM stuff, which Frank's blog post is awesome. I wish more people would write posts like his, which is basically like, let the LLM go take a first crack at it, but then like you need to oversee it, and you need to, like, an LLM is going to have nuggets of really great stuff, like really, really great stuff. But it can also make architecturally unsustainable code. And so it's like, great. Like you see it everywhere. It's like, I made a thing in 2 days. And you're like, okay, well, is that an architecturally sustainable 2 days? Like, is that still going to work in 2 years? So, that's everything you see is very architecturally sound from us. We almost over index on that sometimes.
Right. Well, so that was another one of my myths. So I had somebody run into me at Adobe Developer Live in November. We were talking edge delivery, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not. One day I might go that way." But honestly, like all the Helix stuff, I could vibe code that in a weekend. Like I could just bust that out. I'm like, I know enough of the Helix team to know that that's super extra not true. But also just the number of intentional decisions there. To me, it's kind of like, why didn't anybody, Vibe designed the iPhone 4 when the iPhone 4 was released. Like there's so many intentional surfaces and features to that. It might look simple, but like what's your take on the relative simplicity of Helix?
So there's two parts to this, or I'll give you two analogies. So the first one is like, I really like, oh, you know this. I really like espresso. I really like nice coffee.
Yep.
And there's a common phrase, which is espresso is an afternoon to learn and a lifetime to master. Edge delivery very much is that. You can start building a block in less than an hour. You're go through the tutorial. That's going to be 15 minutes. Then you start reading some documentation. You're like, I want to get some pixels on a page. You're going to be going real fast, especially with all the new agent stuff that we released on AEM Live. The next sort of analogy and the challenge is that you will now spend the rest of your career making that great. You learned the basics. Okay, I know how to make a block. Okay, cool. I'm ready to go. Everything's a block now. And you're like, ooh, maybe everything is not a block. And how do you know that? The other analogy I would give, or the other quote, which I believe is a Mark Twain quote, which is basically, I'm sorry this letter is long. I didn't have enough time to write a shorter letter. So you get up and running real fast, and maybe you're even vibe coding and everything. And then all of a sudden you have a block that probably only needed 100 lines. And if you let the LLM run amok without too much oversight, you have something that's like 400 lines. And so all of a sudden you're like, okay, so the LLM kind of did you dirty there. Does it work and everything? And maybe that block is throwaway. Maybe it's only for this one simple campaign. Vibe code the crap out of that. Like,
do it. Yeah.
But if you have this ultra precious hero block that you need, you do have 100 humans that are going to work on it with their LLM buddy, along the, like, you are probably going to want to like write that shorter letter. You're going to want to spend the time to write that shorter letter. The other thing is like, there's kind of, speaking of blocks, there's kind of these three different approaches to blocks. And I think especially if folks are coming from AEM, they're sort of used to the JCR is very key value pair, right? It's like, give me, what are my properties? What are my JCR properties? And so, and also React and those things have kind of lend themselves to give me my props object or whatever and get out of my way. You tell me the key, tell me the value, and get out of my way. I think engineers can naively go into block building with like, just like, and so all of a sudden you get like taking a button, for example. If you do take this key value style approach, you're like, button text, and it's camel cased, and so that's not going to be very author friendly. Author's going to mess that up. And they're button style, and then you have button link, and then and all of a sudden you have like 5 properties in this like little key value block. When in reality, what you want is just link.
Right.
You want to link with some semantics. And so I break blocks down for edge delivery into sort of 3 categories, which is like you have your blocks that are defined by their semantics. This has a heading in it. This has a heading 2 in it. If I have text above a heading, that means it's detail or eyebrow text. If I have an image in this particular cell, that means this particular block has a foreground image. If this block has a image in this particular cell, then I know it's a background image. So you lean on the semantics of the block. Overwhelmingly, we prefer that blocks are built with like defined by their semantics. There are times, but that is challenging. If you're not used to that, if you're not used to thinking like, okay, my author is going to give me an H1 with a link. How should that link behave? Like, do I want this link to automatically light up as a button if it's in here, or do I want to give my authors, like if they bold it, they're going to get an accent. If they italicize it, they're going to get a secondary color, things like that. So there's the blocks that are defined by their semantics. And then you have your blocks that are truly key value pair blocks. Like a forms block is a really great example. It's like, just, let me define these are, or metadata blocks almost. They're
Right.
writing metadata blocks. Like section metadata is very key value pair, like style, give me my list of styles, grid, which
here's
number.
Here's the form I want you to use. Here's the place I want it to go. Here's the campaign that it's associated with, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. The redirect URI, like semantics don't really apply there. And then last but not least, you have link blocks, right? These are like, hey, Edge Delivery doesn't support nesting because they saw the mess that Parsis and Responsive Grid created from over nesting and misuse. So Edge Delivery doesn't support nesting. And so you're telling me I have a page, I have sections, and then I have blocks inside the sections, but I need like one extra level or something. And so it's like, okay, what if we said this block is actually a link? And so if it follows a particular pattern, youtube.com. If I see a link with youtube.com, I want to have like image or my video next to some text, I can do that. I can throw the link in. It's going to hydrate into a YouTube block, and then I have my text, and they're both inside a columns block. So you have that third and final block style, which is like a link-based block or an auto block. So the that's sort of like that's where I see. I'm trying to think of the right way to close this out, but the challenge is like, you may come into this thinking that it's like super easy, and it is super easy, but like building something that's like world-class, author-friendly, it can take a little bit of time, and you're not just going to, like, if you want a really truly exceptional, like author experience and cohesive website, you're probably looking at, depending on the thing, like, either, and it really kind of depends on like, how important is it? Back to the whole like hero block versus like vibe coded promotion that's only going to run for like 2 weeks. And I think that's another fun thing that's about Edge Delivery is like, at least on adobe.com, the Firefly product page is actually just such a great example, because we would have marketing would come in and be like, hey, we want to make something really splashy. And we're like, well, it needs to be really splashy. Okay. Did you think about localization? Did you think about this? Did you think about that? And they're like, ooh, we didn't think about all of those things. And you're quoting us like 2 months to build this. And we're like, yeah, because I know it's just throwaway, but we got to have a sling model, and we've got to have we got to make sure it's localizable and all this stuff. And so now, because blocks are so cheap, especially with vibe coding,
Mm-hmm.
The Firefly really just can't say enough about this. Like, everyone should go look at it, because it was like, yeah, we can knock this out in 2 weeks. We have Adobe Max coming up. We want to make a really splashy page. Your design is ready. We're going to point the LLM at your design. We're going to have a hand over the wheel, so to speak. But we don't have to be too precious about the code. There's not a deployment lifecycle that we have to worry about or anything. So go make that. And so all of a sudden, marketing can be a lot more nimble and not feel like they're beholden to engineering. But again, there will be times where you're like, no, this is super important. Let's write tests. Let's, whatever your criteria of really important is.
Well, I think though, and this is one of the things in that the simplicity of the design, or the apparent simplicity of the design that had so much thought put into it, obviously, that I don't think that we talked about too much, is with a WYSIWYG, you are assuming that you're trying to edit the final product. and assuming that the author knows the elements that the final product was comprised of, which is that's in some cases very difficult to assume that they know that this was a form and this was a background and this is a this and this is a that, right? So you have that assumption. You're trying to still tell them to edit the final product. Whereas the reality of most content-driven sites is that the author starts from something that looks nothing like the final product, and it's the content creators or the content is that CMS user's job to somehow take the source and make it look like the final product, and the speed and simplicity to which this type of document-based authoring setup bridges the gap between the source information and the final and allows that bridge to flow is, to me, the honest power of that is where are you coming from? So you got this crazy thing. Oh, you want nesting. You want this crazy thing. I get it. Cool. Where did you start? How does the data arrive to you? And the fact that the editing looks remarkably like the data that you started with, to me, that's an understated amount of power right there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Is back in 2020, it was really, I guess it was 2019, the lightning in the bottle moment of document-based authoring. It was like, it really came to just surveying users or not even users, but like business people. And it was like, how do you let's go back to basics here. How do you get your content? Well, I get a Word document, and then I pay a vendor $80,000 a year to take that Word document and put it into WordPress. Whoa, what? And like a lot of like smaller sites, right? So this was a lot of like helping friends and family. It's like, hey, I'm doing research for a new CMS. And you have a restaurant or you have an ice cream shop or whatever. And you like, how do you use Squarespace today? Oh, I have a Google Doc, and I just select my text and then I put it into my Squarespace editor field by field. And it was like, whoa. What if we just got rid of that? And it was like, maybe. And so now if I have let's say some C-level person gives me a Word document, now can we paste that directly into DA without modifying anything? Yeah, you actually can. Now you're not going to get all of the fun features that you've had your developers build for your website. Carousels and things like that. You don't expect your C-level person. They don't need to know that stuff. It's like, make your content wherever you want, give it to us, and we have a lot less work to do because it's already in a document. And that's what's kind of funny is like, especially like we definitely we over-index on web pages, but within the sort of edge delivery Kool-Aid drinking team. But it's like, okay, you want a document, you want a homepage. Your homepage is a document. Mm-hmm. We're going to have you create in a document, and then you're going to be supplied a document. So it's like document. And they all have their sort of different flavors, if you will. So the exec may come up with their own like bespoke how they do their tables to denote, I want to see a tabs block here, and you don't have to necessarily train them, but at least you have a fighting chance. You're not tediously, pulling out pieces. Oh, I accidentally didn't select that period or whatever. It's like Command A, Command C, Command V, and then, let me go to my block library. Okay. Accordion, click, done. Massage the content, and you're not in this like open dialogue hell. That's mine.
So yeah. So okay. So I think I want to wrap up our marathon session, but I want to wrap it up on a something that was said I didn't want to get into AI, but the AI is inescapable in how the approach to pages and approach to this goal of all websites being page views and so forth, and how this is we're on the cusp of having something completely upend the entire web framework that we've been working with really the last 25 years. And like in terms of even the goal of what we're trying to make a website for. Like we've been trying to optimize for a thing which we may not be optimizing for. So if you're going to net new make a website, a big one, a big thing for a big company, the thing that we're actually making a website for may be potentially totally different.
Yeah.
How do you see the job of the CMS and the things that you're making the CMS for, enabling any, I guess, like the future that you're kind of envisioning or that you see the web traveling in? This is super open-ended, but it's like, you can't,
sides. There's two sides to this. So what's really interesting for me is that I think we should, if we do things the right way, even if we do things the wrong way, we should encourage an explosion of more content creation. Where the conventional wisdom, and I think Cedric touched a little bit on this at Adobe Developers Live, or somebody did. The conventional wisdom was like, keep your pages short, keep them really digestible. If you write a wall of text, no one's going to read it. Don't be overly verbose, all those things. And that's great for humans, but if a human is moving all of their search queries, really questions, to an LLM, and LLM is going to scoop that up, and it's like the more the more the merrier. The more content and the more context that the LLM has, the better off it is. So we're almost pivoting to a world of more content. Now, I would strongly, and I am neither skeptic nor like AI is
fanboy.
I'm not an AI fanboy. I'm kind of in the middle, but you can't, that has to be really high quality content. It can't be, we've all been there where we've asked an LLM to do something relatively creative and it just like, it's like a little too high on its own supply, where it's like overly like, friendly or like over this or over that. And you're like, yeah, this, you're just saying words to say words. You're not actually saying anything meaningful. So the trick will be, how do we create meaningful content? We know, I was looking at like GPUs that work great on Linux and like weighing the trade-offs and everything. And this was all pure LLM. I did no traditional search engine stuff. And so like, if I'm weighing that and it's like, okay, NVIDIA has a proprietary driver, so it's going to support HDMI 2.1, ATI, or I guess, AMDs have open source drivers, so they're going to perform really well, but the HDMI consortium doesn't. This is all stuff I learned from an LM. Like HDMI consortium doesn't allow the 2.1 spec to be in open source drivers, weighing the trade-offs, like what can I do? So like, the LLM had to consume a ton of like nerd blog posts, highly detailed, to help me make an informed decision. And if we are approaching content from like a, that really lends itself to the LLM can give me better answers if it has more content to work with. So the trick is, so that's more on the delivery side, right? It's like it's in your best interest to create more content, but it has to be meaningful content. It has to be very useful content. And then on the flip side is, as a platform provider of a CMS, we have to, and I think we've seen this in other areas. Like Apple famously was not able to ship all of their AI promises.
Right.
And so what we have to do is we cannot set the LLM up for failure. So if you ask an LLM to do something that it's not good at, well, you can't blame the LLM. If I ask the apple to taste like a banana, I should not get mad at the apple for not tasting like a banana. So if I'm asking an LLM to give me I'm expecting the LLM to do something very deterministic. And if it messes it up, I can't get mad at the LLM because it's like the LLM is very non-deterministic. So we have a responsibility to set folks up for success. We have a responsibility to not over prophesize the merits of AI. Again, that's my opinion of this is probably born out into that lab. It's like, yeah, I'm going to have an LLM generate tags, but I'm going to give a human the governance abilities to help it along. So that's for me, that's the big one. Is like my poster child customer, the school system. They had like a 3-hour AI pitch, and they were just kind of like, they were kind of a little underwhelmed because they were like, all this AI stuff is kind of interesting, but like we don't see how it applies to us. And they actually were like, hey, we're your biggest customer, can you give us like a 1-hour like roadmap session? And part of that roadmap session was like practical, the title was like practical AI you can use today. So things like smart crop and like our new focal point detection with the machine learning models and whatnot. And I think for me, that's where like I want us to be, is like, how do we not overpromise and underdeliver? And so how do we take like a very, again, this is another Chris Millar trope, but like very crawl, walk, run in terms of like, how do we enable you? I think like things like LLM optimizer and what we're doing as far as like stitching content together for LLM crawlers is really interesting, because like that's not even an LLM thing, but it helps you on the delivery side. And things like Sites Optimizer, not to get too like sales pitchy, but like Sites Optimizer is another good one where it's like, on the box, like, hey, we're going to auto fix this stuff for you and all of that. But like, as you use it, it's like, yes, the AI system will give you recommendations, and you as a human, you need to decide if that works for you. So a great example of that is like, it might say like, hey, you need to, if you remove the phone number field from your form sign up, our data suggests that you will get X number more signups if you remove the phone number field. And it's like, great, LLM. Thank you for that recommendation, but our salespeople need a phone number to call somebody. Or we are mandated to, and so you just like, nope, goodbye. And so, and other times the LLM's going to say, hey, we noticed something, because it can do things at scale that humans just can't. So it's like, let's set the LLM up for success, and let's pick those tasks where it will be successful. The other piece I would say, which I think is really interesting, is like, if you remember the LLM, this is both sad and also good in a way, where in the Web 2.0 era, so the sort of like Flickr heyday era.
I still have my Flickr account, by the way. It's like 20 years old, but yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Everyone, we realized that REST APIs were like the amazing interoperability layer. And so you had everything from like blog roles, so you could link out to your friends, to a lot of social media at the time. Again, early 2000s, mid to early 2000s, a lot of social media had REST APIs. And then all of a sudden this idea of these like closed walled gardens came in. And so the Web 2.0 kind of went away. It was like, hey, Instagram came out. I want to be able to post an image like I can to Flickr with an API. And Instagram's like, no, you're not doing that. And that's even pre Facebook buyout. Mm-hmm. So what's really interesting is that with LLMs, folks are starting to relearn that lesson that like interoperability is actually a good thing. Mm-hmm. If you have and it's kind of sad because like we lost that, I think, like having really great RESTful APIs, we lost that from the public web. And MCP has a chance where it's like, if I do a search in Gemini for a product, I want to be able to see those products. Well, I want to be able to like buy now. Like when I say another example, I did a search for I was comparing mattresses. So I was like, we have this old mattress. I guess it's discontinued. Can you tell me what's the closest one? I'm not going to try and figure out like Reddit posts and all that. Just Gemini, just tell me which is the newer version of this mattress. So I would love to be able to just check out. And so MCP has the potential of solving that. And some of I'm not the biggest ChatGPT fan, but even like the app stuff that ChatGPT is doing, which is like just loosely disguised MCP servers.
Right.
Or at least that's my understanding. All of a sudden having an open ecosystem is becoming important again in like an open platform. So that will be really interesting. Being able to like getting back to like, it's so weird that we're backing ourselves into Web 2.0 again through MCP. And luckily we have all the PMs that are on board with this now, instead of the nerds trying to push RESTful APIs because we all wanted to talk to each other.
Right, because now suddenly we need to be able to have a website that has its capabilities, its core capabilities exposed in a predictable way to a machine.
Yeah. And the research that we're doing around MCPs in the edge delivery space is really interesting. So again, as I sort of close, or as I sort of said, like we chose certain technologies as sort of self-preservation because we were a small team. One of the things that we sort of kicked down the road was search. We have like, it's funny because our search is really just a filter.
Right.
We pull down every single document and then we search it and we say, does the string exist or not? You're searching the raw HTML. The crazy thing is I was just waiting. I've just been waiting for someone to say like, your search is not fancy like Google or Elasticsearch or any of those, Algolia. I've just been waiting for someone to say like, technically speaking, our search is like the dumbest thing in the world. Hold down every single document in a tree, see if the text exists or not. Mm-hmm. And not a single non-technical person has said a thing. They do a search, they find exactly what they want. And it is very terse. Amald actually just added case sensitivity, or turning off case sensitivity, because very like what you search is what you search. And so technically speaking, it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh man, we're gonna have to pay that off at some point. Some customer is going to come along and say your search is not good enough. And the hilarious thing is no one has said anything. We've had some like interesting feature requests of like decorating the search better, of like, allow me to scope my search to a block, allow my search to scope to a value. But we've never had anyone say this is not using, like, no one has ever said this is not using Elasticsearch or anything like that. So what's interesting is that we have an MCP for DA, and just playing around with it. And again, it's all research. We don't have any announcements to make as far as shipping or anything. So I was just playing with it in general. And so I said, my canonical example of testing things in DA is the AEM sites page. So I always, for some reason, like if somebody wants to see a demo or something, I'm like, let's go look at the AEM sites page. Because it's a good metaphor of like, I'm on a call, some partner is like, edge delivery can't handle big sites. And I'm like, our literal AEM sites page is in DA. You know, it's not delivery. So it kills a lot of birds. But what's fun about it is, so I'm on the MCP and I add my bearer token and I go, find me the AEM sites page. And it's like, okay, I'm in business. I'm in the tree of business. I think I gave it a little more help. It was like, find me the AEM sites page in the Adobe Baycom project. And it's like, okay, it listed the first list, and it says, hey, in my world knowledge, I know that AEM Sites is a Adobe product. So, and I see a folder called products. Okay. I'm going to go list the products page. Oh, I see a folder called Experience Manager. AEM Sites is associated with Experience Manager. I'm going to go list that. And then I'm going to list, I think it was called, there's like one other level, I think maybe. And so what's crazy is like in our current search, again, which is a glorified filter, it lists everything, and then it goes until you're happy and you stop the search. But this was intelligent enough. And so now I'm thinking like, okay, so if I take that no one has really complained that they can't do like multi-word searches or like right. And searches or searches, not a single person has asked for this. It's really wild. If I take that, and then we have this really great MCP server, and if we put an MCP in the UI, does this pass our test of like setting it up for success, or are we setting it up for failure? And that's what all this research is like, do we like this ourselves? Because we're a customer ourselves. And so that's the other piece is like, I think MCP is going to be really interesting. And the other and maybe last piece to this is that AI has fundamentally shifted how we build DA. 2025 has been such a success story for AI and DA in how we build and how we build DA. So early on, when I went through all the research of what actual text editor to use, like the underlying thing, and I even tried rolling our own, and it was like there's too many weird browser quirks with editing text. So we standardized on this thing called Prosmir, and I always knew that Prosmir was incredibly powerful, incredibly flexible, but the API documentation was real rough. And so the first year and a half, or I guess like 2 years of DA, building anything into the editor, it was like kiss 2 weeks goodbye to like make, like if I paste in https google.com, like I want you to automatically convert this into a link. And it's like, okay, I need to know where your selection is. I need to know where you paste it. I need to know like all these, like building a plugin for that, like originally took to do like auto paste links took like a week of traditional research and everything.
Right.
This year, we have made such incredible strides to the author experience inside DA for the document because of AI, because we can say, let's build a working example of any sort of feature. There's both good and bad to this. So the good is like some of our more seasoned, like people that have used LLMs a lot and know like what is good at, what it's not, have the sort of oversight, right? You have this really eager junior level engineer right now. And sometimes that junior engineer is really great and sometimes it's really bad.
Right.
And your feedback loop is way faster. It's not like you go send a junior engineer off and they go spend 2 weeks and then you come back and it's like, oh my gosh, we just wasted 2 weeks on all of this.
They may have been developing. They may have been playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been one thing that's like fundamentally changed. And so we have to, it has accelerated DA's development, but then just for as many times as an engineer says, whoa, AI saved me a ton of time. And here's a really great looking PR that's like really concise and really well thought out and all of this. We also have other engineers that are like, hey, I just vibe coded this. Of course you want it. And it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so that's the one thing is like, and I'm all about vibe coding and I'm all about PMs, especially vibe coding. It's like, go iterate with your junior level engineer, figure out all the things you forgot to think about. And like, if you would have come to me in a different day, like a different age, you would come to me with your half-baked ideas, like go get that all sorted out with junior level engineer. Right. And then let's go have like, you can save both of us a crap ton of time. You vibe coding with your junior level engineer, and then you come to me with like a fully baked idea that where all the edge cases. I don't have to come and figure out all the edge cases for you. Your junior LLM engineer did. So I'm a huge fan of that. And again, it's pick your poison, right? So as we're doing research on this structured content, this incredible engineer, he went and vibe coded this thing and it was like, okay, there's something to this idea. Let's go like maybe try to start making it real so we can put it in front of customers. Because I do not want to have a customer support ticket on top of all this LLM generated code. But we got the idea and it's like, okay, there's something to this. So that's another piece is like AI has really impacted in a mostly positive way. I would say like 80% positive. LLM has really accelerated how quickly we can build things in DA. And again, the responsibility is ours to make sure it's architecturally sustainable. Sometimes that junior engineer knocks it out of the park and sometimes it doesn't. And so you hope that when the person hits submit on that PR, that they've already done all of the sort of mentorship to get it into a good working state. But from a content creation perspective, again, more thoughtful content is going to be key. And then, MCP, don't sleep on MCP, even for your regular site. Go read Frank's post. Again, I couldn't recommend that post enough. So yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think that this is going to be, we got like 4 months now or something like that, or 3 months and change, until Adobe Summit.
Yeah.
Traditionally in the ye old days of shrink wrap product versions and stuff like that, we'd all be like waiting for, what is the new thing that you're going to come out with by Adobe Summit? Yeah. I almost feel like right now, like there's such a velocity of advancement, month after month. Personally, I'm looking forward to folks getting a congealed set of understanding around what is the state of product categories now. Because there's so many of these established product categories that you were assuming were going to perform a function, and is that function even needed anymore? Or if it is needed, what should it do in my job of creating content? So this is it's a wild time to be alive.
Yeah, it's funny. Some folks I think have been a little nervous about AI and what it means. Like, can a customer go vibe code a CMS? Yeah, sure. They'll be back. I don't know of a single customer that has ever built a homegrown CMS and been happy with it. Beyond like the first 6 months where everything's rosy. And so like I think we have some really incredible technologies, and we made some really good foundational decisions that have turned out to be really smart in a post LLM world. And our goal is always, especially my goal anyways, is how do we empower people to make what they want to make. And if you are an enterprising entrepreneur and you have a little 5-page site and you look at DA and you're like, I don't understand document-based authoring when I have Webflow or whatever. If you have 5 pages having done something like this, like, yeah, like maybe the productivity gains and the author experience and the developer experience, maybe all of that is lost on you, because if you only have 5 pages, well, what's the difference between, 5 minutes and 5 hours?
Right.
But but if you have content scalability issues, like, I don't know that you have a better, you certainly don't have a better option, especially like as commerce has come together. That's another one, like really high SKU count. How do you manage this stuff? How do you create like really bespoke destination style sites that, because we are living in a post LLM world. So yeah, I think Summit's going to be really, really fun. You're seeing, like, we talked about Storefront last year. Last year was kind of like the coming out party of DA and Edge Delivery and Adobe Commerce all together. I'm really excited to see what sort of the sort of like polishing down and refinements of those things look like. And Adobe Summit is by far my favorite time of the year.
Well, I'll be there. All right. Well, this was a marathon, man. But I think that I don't think there's any way that we could have slimmed this down. This is a new. If you missed the Edge, like we were saying earlier, if you missed the Edge Delivery, introduction, then there's no way to shortcut the amount of change that this has afforded to a traditional enterprise, to a traditional, flow of creating product. But here we are.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for your time, Tad. I'm glad we finally were able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we'll cut it there.
Okay.
All right. See you.